thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. And I know for people in other places, early evening. I appreciate your guys' time and the opportunity to present to you. Um, I'm going to speak today just more about my journey from becoming a peer, what led to me being a peer, all the way through the work that I do now, and then part of my personal journey as well, and that includes um, what Jessica was stating as far as living in a homeless shelter and now being a homeowner as well, just my personal journey. So once again, I appreciate you guys, and we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm starting with where I started, what makes me a peer. So um, that starts with my recovery journey. So I entered Seattle's Union Gospel Mission to do what was known as the Men's Recovery Program. That was April of 2021, and this recovery program that I entered was at a large men's shelter here in downtown Seattle. By the way, this is where I'm located in Seattle, Washington, which is housed in King County. So yeah, I did what was initially called the 𝗣𝗿𝗲𝘀𝗲𝗍 recovery program. It was like a 3-month transitional program. I entered that program after being released from King County Jail. So I entered this program after being incarcerated for about 3 months. And then I entered the Bridge Recovery Program in the downtown men's shelter. And then I moved to a 12-month recovery program in Burien, Washington, called Riverton Place. So that was a program that I completed. So that was 15 months of just recovery program. And then after that, I entered what's known in Seattle's Union Gospel Mission as the Christian Services Internship. So I served as an intern while living in the men's shelter as well. So, and my role as an intern was I worked in what was called the Extended Care Program, which is a program for men in post-hospital recovery. So people that are homeless a lot of times don't have the ability to get operations done because they don't have a place to recover. So the shelter where I was living and working had a program just for people that needed operations and needed a place to recover. So I served there. And I did 10 months of that internship before I started my job. Uh, the other part of my recovery journey was that when I was released from jail, I was part of the CCAP program, which is Community Correction Alternative Programs. So I was released from jail to do a specific recovery program with Union Gospel Mission here in Seattle. So I had pending court cases throughout this entire journey, and that was something that I had to deal with and had to deal with even after being hired. And then as a part of my recovery journey as well, I decided to make a strong focus of that, dealing with my mental health. So I had a PTSD diagnosis. I was able to start doing therapy and work on my mental health to stabilize my life, and those are the things that went into why I was able to become a peer, what made me a peer, And while I was doing the internship at UGM, I decided a friend of mine told me about peer counseling, the certified peer counseling program that they have here in Washington State. And that was like at the end of my recovery program, I decided to start doing it really like the last month. I completed like the online prerequisite training course that made me eligible to take the in-person course. So I did the online training. It took me about a week to complete that part while I was in the recovery program. And then once I was in the internship, I was able to complete the in-person. It was like a 1-week in-person course that I completed. And then I was, after completing the class, I had to take an exam, and then there was like a panel interview, and then I was able to receive my certification as a peer counselor in Washington State. And that kind of changed things for me, just to have a certification, and then have a skill set to be able to use in my internship. So after I received the certification, I still worked in my internship for 6 months at the shelter. But one thing that was pretty amazing about the my experience taking the in-person course was that I met my cohort in that class was about 20 people, and I met people that were working in this field professionally, and I met two individuals in that class, Shannon and Santi, who who told me about the work they were doing at King County Regional Homelessness Authority and encouraged me to apply um, to where they were working, you know. And at that time, I hadn't completed my internship and I still was on my, I still had a program that I was committed to. So, you know, in conversation, I was just, hey, you know, when I'm ready, I will look into it. But I stayed in contact with these individuals. So I was able to use my certified peer counseling skills, peer support, peer specialist skills in the internship that I was already in, serving the men in the program that I was working with at UGM. So I was able to kind of fine tune my skills and develop my own personality as a peer counselor, peer supporter, peer advocate for about 6 months, you know, and a lot of that was motivational interviewing, goal setting, conflict resolution. And it took me a while to kind of find my footing as far as taking these things that I learned in class or um, in in an in-person class and an online class and just making them my own and and adding my personality to it and really being able to speak the language, do the documentation work, the note taking and things like that, because I hadn't done this type of work ever before, you know. So that was something that it was good for me to have that kind of buffer or transition period, you know, and that was about a 6 month period. And then in nearing the end of my internship program, I was thinking about jobs to apply to, and the only job I applied to was the one that I have now, you know. So at that time, I reached out to my friends that were working here, the contacts I had made in the peer counseling class, and you know they showed me where the application was, and I went through the whole application process. I mean, it was a huge help that that I knew people that worked here, so they were kind of able to give me the inside scoop or give me the relevant information that I needed to be able to go through this process smoothly. I mean, I think that was the biggest part, you know. And then I also living in a homeless shelter, I think I lived in a really supportive community. Everybody was on board with what I was trying to do, you know. So I had a lot of help as far as, you know, create drafting resume and coming up with a strategy once I even received the information that I would be receiving an interview preparation and things like that. So I had a good supportive community. And then in going through that process of then being hired on, you know, with obviously a big blessing, you know, to get a job. But then I had a whole lot of anxiety because I hadn't had a professional job um, uh, since 2016, you know. So that was a big thing that caused me anxiety, you know, about like, okay, what is it going to look like for me to work professionally now after trying to change my life and work in this type of field, you know? And then obviously a big hurdle was the background check. I had pending criminal cases, you know, and that was a big thing. But some of these things that I had a lot of anxiety about, you know, well, having a mental health diagnosis, having a criminal background, these are the things that made me appear, you know. So these are the things that were really my qualifications to do this work instead of the other way around. I think generally in society, we think about a lot of these things as hindering us from getting a job when this was the only type of work where these were the things that I put on my resume. You know, I put on my resume that, you know, I was in a recovery program. I put on my resume that I was in dealing with mental health. I put on my resume that I was dealing with that I'm justice impacted, you know, even learning the terminology of being able to use these things to as our qualifications, I think was a whole new paradigm shift and framework change for me, you know. So that was hugely beneficial to me. And then um, but also I can't stress enough how important it was for me to know people that were already doing this job, because after my interview, you know, my friends that work here like called me directly, you know, hey, you know, my supervisor just told me they interviewed you and things went well, or and then yeah, so that I think that was a big benefit, you know. And then going through the onboarding process caused a lot of anxiety too. It was like, oh, how does this process go? Which one of these, what medical insurance should I sign up for? Or what retirement plan should I choose? You know? And I think from where I was living, I really had tried to take advantage of all the programs that was available to me at Union Gospel Mission. So I had taken like a finance class there, and I was able to call the instructor from that class and say, hey, what retirement plan should I sign up for, or you know, all these different things. So really being able to use all the resources that I had at that level just built good habits, I think, for moving through some of this stuff. And then, so then beginning to work, there was a lot of things that this was an entire learning process for me, just working in a professional setting. I'm working for a governmental agency. So I think one of the most interesting things was about this was I was hired, like the whole onboarding process and hiring process was all virtual. And so my first day in work in training, I came to the building that I work in now, and I think it was just maybe one of the most ironic situations of my life that day, because the I work on the sixth floor of one of the King County buildings, but the first floor of that building is a probation office that I was where my probation officer works, So like my first day, I go to the sixth floor, do the onboarding, and then I go back and I see my probation. She's like, "What are you doing here?" Like, because I didn't have to come in at that point. I was just reporting by phone, and I'm like, I got a job, here, and it was really an interesting moment in my life. It was pretty cool. But I mean, she was really proud of me, obviously, and I had been under her supervision for almost 2 years at that point. So it had been a long journey. I had completed classes with them, and every, every step of the journey she'd been a part of. So it was really interesting, like day or ironic situation. But then starting to work, there was all these things about learning your agency's culture or navigating a workplace, coworkers, like having supervisors and directors, and the hierarchical nature of some of this work, was new to me, or at least I was being reintroduced to this. This was not like the first job I ever had, but it was the first job I've had for a while, So I just really there was an adjustment period for me, and then one thing that was cool was that I worked on a huge team of peers. There were like we were it was a team of 38 that I was on, and most everybody had lived experience. So it was really the best place to start for me, just to re-enter the workforce, was around a bunch of people that are doing this work that have similar backgrounds, not the same, but because we're all different, but a lot of similar understandings of life, and then to be able to do work that everybody's passionate about, I think that was hugely helpful. And then I was able to meet people that were in different spaces or different places in their recovery journey or in their peer journey. Some people that, you know, they're they're 20 years down the line from where I'm at, so that people can, give me advice and tips and tricks on how to move through this industry or how to develop my career. But also at the same time, I am living in a homeless shelter, so that made my situation, I think, a little bit different, or the fact that I was currently on probation. These are all things that um, I think were abnormal hurdles that most people probably are not experiencing, but my supervisors were understanding and lenient to some of these things that I had going on. I had ongoing criminal matters, so there were certain things that I had to deal with. But as a part of that too, it's like for me, what was hugely important to be able to navigate this was just goal setting. I had set goals from when I was in the shelter, and what my plans were for how, like, financial goals, my professional goals, all these different things I had to set and look at every day just to continuously try to hit these markers. I was still living where I had a case manager, so I was able to use that as a huge resource. Or I was really trying to have a network of mentors. I had a couple of mentors that I would really connect with weekly, so they can continuously give me advice, and then mentors in different areas of my life. Some were just general life mentors, some were professional mentors, some were like just focusing on my financial goals and things like that. So I entered this job, and even before I started earning a check, I had I had a larger goal in mind, and I had a plan to get there. You know, I had a plan to purchase a home. I knew exactly how much money I had to save, how much money out of each check I would have to save. And um, that was hugely beneficial for just keeping me on the right track and even able to do this work, you know. And I think part of that too was that I living where I was living, I had a huge support network, you know, and that was able to give me like the work life balance part of it too, you know. When I leave work, I have, you know, a whole bunch of friends waiting for me where I'm living at that moment, you know. So I was able to have that safe and healthy space as far as work life balance, and I think I've been able to transition that with me now as well, because I think naturally I'm just a workaholic, and I'm passionate about this work that I do, but also I can't let a bad day at work become a bad day in my life, you know. And especially in this type of work, in the work that I'm doing, we're working with unhoused clients or recently housed clients, clients that are dealing with all types of issues and severe situations, or, you know, some of my days are just crisis response, you know, and people having the worst day of their life, you know. and and coming from a lived experience background, I can relate to a lot of that personally, you know. But if that affects, if I allow that effect to affect me outside of work, then it could be detrimental to my life. It could be triggering. I am somebody, you know, that is in mental health therapy, or I deal with PTSD, and I have to be, I'm hypersensitive to how these things will affect my mental health or affect my life as well. So I had to be very intentional about how I would let my work affect my life, you know, and to really even have a plan around that, and work with my therapist a lot just around self-care strategies and things like that. So I think it was, and then also to develop like a community even outside of the shelter as well. You know, like I started volunteering at my neighborhood community center that I grew up around, you know, just to give me other outlets as well, you know, to be able to be involved in community. So and then just personal healthy habits, what works for me, what doesn't work for me, exercise or routines. Routines are a big thing for me, you know, and just having hobbies, you know. So, and then the last part of it was just trying to focus on skills development, you know, and really making an analysis of where I was at, you know, like what skills do I need to work on, you know, what do I already have and bring to the table, you know, and then where am I trying to use these skills to get to, you know. And that just that process was just about analyzing myself and where I'm at, and then where I want to get to, and then what steps I need to take to get there. And I think um, one of the biggest things that helped me, and it was great advice that I got, is to inform all my superiors about my desire for development. Sit my direct supervisor down, sit my director down, say, hey, you know, this is what I want, this is what I need, this is what I'm trying to do. You know, can you give me opportunities to, or can you support me on this journey to develop this skill set? I want, you know, and I mean, even this being here today, you know, like building my presentation skills, you know, or building my documentation skills, or building my networking skills, or all these different things. It was hugely beneficial to me to inform everybody around me so that everybody can support me, you know, in this goal, or there are things they know or opportunities other people know about that they can really help you tap into. And then dedicating time in my schedule to just for professional development, you know. Like I try to set aside a couple hours every week to do webinars or trainings or something to build up my skill set, you know. And then that, and if I set aside time for it, then I can schedule it ahead of time. You know, I can schedule myself to do conferences, to do webinars or trainings that I know that can benefit me. And then in scheduling it ahead of time, I can let my supervisors and directors know what I got going on so that they can support it as well. So we're all on the same page. I think that direct line of communication is really important for getting getting people to help you and support you. That's that's worked for me very well. And then networking externally outside of just my organization, I think something like this, just being a part of conferences or co-working events and things like that in this industry and for my industry in the homeless services industry here in Seattle and King County, I think it's important to just to meet people outside of just my organization, because these are the people that I work with. We work with so many other organizations that are serving our clients. A lot of times we have the same clients, so being able to have that professional network outside of your agency, I think that's been hugely beneficial to me. And part of one of the things that's been very helpful to me too is just the time I spend in the shelter. I know all the homeless service agencies because all my friends access services at all these places. And then a bunch of my friends as well ended up getting into this work, So people, I know people intimately, like we were friends we lived together at a shelter, and now they're all doing this work at other agencies, So it's and it builds on itself, It's like almost like there is like yeah, there's a lot of momentum to that as far as just building your network and growing and helping others develop, because then they help you develop, and then we're all building up together. So I think there was a lot of momentum for me in that, and then watching my friends elevate and they're helping me elevate, and then we're able to help each other even more. It's it, it's good. I think I've seen that, like that that part of it grow for me. And then networking internally, I think has been really important for me. Just getting to know other people inside my agency that don't work on my team, in other teams outside of my team, and just getting to know what everybody does and who everybody is, and just building personal relationships with people. That's been hugely beneficial for me, just even to do my job at a high level, but just to even know what my agency does. There are a lot of, you know, it's a large organization, so there are people in all doing all different types of projects in different programs, doing different things, yet and still we can all help each other in some way or some fashion, or it can give me insight into maybe a larger scope of the work that I'm doing, me doing direct service, and there are people that are doing grant compliance or program development or all these different things that can educate me at at a at a greater level to even the work I'm doing, and I can help them too, and giving them like what a direct service experience looks like, or how the grant that they're applying for could actually affect my clients, or the programs that they're developing, what our clients' perspective would be on these things, or how I'm somebody with lived experience, how I would experience that, or what programs work and don't work. So I think there's a part of and that helps build a professional relationship. I feel like it's not just how I can help somebody, but help, allowing them to help me. That I think that builds genuine bonds, with people. And just even picking people's brains or taking the time to just, ask questions about what they do. Everybody likes to talk about what they do, or what their challenges are, and just taking that time, like at a coffee break or in a meeting room or just office events, things like that. That's really helped me as far as just building genuine relationships with the people that I work with, And then I done I took a lot of time just to try to get as many like certifications and trainings that as I could. I put that on my supervisor's radar from the beginning. Like I just want to build up my resume just with as many certifications as I can, just things to add and build my resume up, but just giving me skills that even if I'm not going to use them immediately, I could see myself using them in the future, or just things I'm interested in and learning about, things that, but focusing on things that I can get a certificate for, that I can add to my resume to really boost up how I look on paper, and I think and then beyond that, I've done like a lot of webinars over the past year just to learn about this entire industry that I'm in, and how the what our regional landscape looks like in doing this work, and that's really helped me as well. And then part of that is I've done like a lot of follow-ups on the webinars as well, and just reaching out to like experts on these specific issues, and just after watching somebody's webinar, sending them an email like, hey, I'm interested in learning more about this specific part of it, or I'm interested in learn more about your organization and how your organization works with mine, and things like that. And that's really helped me develop like my professional network, and then I I spent a couple of hours a couple of months ago just building a catalog of the work that I've done while I've been here, because it was something that was weighing on me one day. I was like, man, I need to sit down and just write a list of all the projects and the things that I've done while I've been here, you know. So I wrote out a pretty good catalog of just top to bottom, every project that I've been a part of, what skills I used, how I developed certain skills of mine, and the things that I've learned in this, it just to and just to try to be intentional about the parts of myself that I have developed, the skills that I have gained, because I'm not the same a person that I was when I started here. You know, it's been almost a year now. It's been about 11 months working this job, but I've gained a lot professionally as far as my skill set and things that I've accomplished, and goals that I've attained, and I think it's good to be intentional about putting that on paper so you can see how far you've come, all the skills that you've gained, and how you can build on these things, you know. And then also maybe some of the things where you might have fallen short, like, okay, I wanted to work more on this specific part of my, um, I wanted to add this skill to my repertoire, and I haven't spent as much time on that as I should have, or now I can look for more opportunities to develop this moving forward, you know. Yeah, and now I'll speak more about like some of the work challenges, and hopefully try to focus on solutions, you know, because I think that's the beneficial part, you know. I think one thing that um, caught me off guard was, and having not been in the professional environment for a number of years, was just office politics, you know. I'm sure everybody has encountered some of that. And I think I had a mentor of mine that I talked to um, regularly, you know, and he made the light go on in my head about this, and was like, you know, because I was kind of struggling with some office politics, and he was like, well, it's the same thing you just dealt with at the shelter. And it was like, huh, you know, the office politics are similar to shelter politics, you know. How funny was that for me? That made it much simpler for me to organize my mind around it. But it was just, I think I already know how to deal with complex environments, you know. It was just being able to have that paradigm shift, like, okay, I'm going to have to use the same interpersonal skills that I used in this place over here, you know, and take myself out of it, because this is just a job. It's my profession. This is what I'm doing to pursue for my profession. But it a lot of that I had to take time to even work this out with my therapist. You know, there are certain things that were like, okay, I'm taking things personally that aren't personal, you know, and just even had to, you know, readjust to that. And, and I say that because I know a lot of my friends that work as peers now, people struggle with that too, you know, is just being in this professional environment. There are decisions that happen way above my pay grade that are going to affect me differently than others, you know. So just trying to have to wrap my head around that, and then being able to process that and come back to it. And it's like, okay, yeah, a lot of these things are interpersonal, and you you know, you don't know what people are going through, you know, especially as peers, especially I can say as myself, as dealing with all the things that I deal with. You know, I can't I can't ever blame somebody for how they came to work today, presented today, or what they're dealing with. Nobody knows, you know. So it was just using interpersonal skills and actual genuine connections to be able to work through issues, you know, that a lot of times have nothing to do with us, you know. But just trying to navigate those waters and using the skills that I already have in my skill set from navigating other complex environments to be able to move around the complexities of an office environment, you know. And then um, that part of it led to like a I don't want to say a tragic situation, but a drastic situation at my job. So as I mentioned before, I was working on a team of 38 peers, and I started work in May of 2023. In October, October 6th of 2023, 75% of my team was let go. There was a mass layoff, like we got the news that our program funding um, expired or ran out. So they were um, laying off everybody, and we're going to keep 10 of us from 38. And that was that was a tough situation. Even these people that I've just become really good friends with and developed real relationships with, we knew that it was over for us working together, and it was public as well. It was in the newspaper and those type of things. So everybody was asking what's going to happen. We had to reapply for our jobs just to see who was going to stay. And lucky for me, I was able to stay on. But that was a hard situation to deal with, I would say, emotionally, mentally, you know, all of that, because it was something that was out of our control. It wasn't based on the work that we did. Our work was considered to be hugely successful, and it was just a funding issue, was what was explained to us, and possibly a political issue. So these things had nothing to do with the work that we were doing, but these things happened. It was just my first experience with any type of mass layoff situation. So just being able to navigate that, and the ill feelings that I had about that whole entire situation, not let that affect my work performance moving forward, just because I had a certain way that I felt about the whole situation, as anyone would, watching all your friends, lose their jobs and lose their source of income or their livelihoods, and then to have to come back to work at that agency. It took some emotional processing, to be able to not let that affect my work performance, my work ethic, the dedication to the work, because in the end, we still had the same clients, and they had nothing to do with any of this. They still needed the services that they needed, and now we were going to have more work to do with less help. So it required even a higher level of dedication and work ethic. So to focus on that part. And then I think through that process of reapplying for my same position, I had to learn how my work was being judged. I think there was a lot of focus. I think for me personally, and I know coworkers and former coworkers of mine, we believe that we're dedicated and we're passionate and we care about the people that we serve. These are our peers. These are people just like we see ourselves in the people that we're serving. But that's just our perspective, I would say from a perspective of the higher ups or the people that are running our agencies or organizations. They're focused on the measurables and the deliverables. So they're focused on documentation, how many case notes are there, and how often are you meeting with clients or these type of things. So I had to really, and we were told like that was part of the reason why I was kept on, was because I had quality documentation and a lot of documentation, but that wasn't even my focus. It was just something that I was doing to try to be, being in good habits. But I think that's a huge part of the work that I do and that we do as peers, is we focus on the care for clients, the care for the people that we serve, but we're being judged on the measurables and the deliverables. So we have to incorporate that into our process, it and know that it's more important. We know that it's most important the care for the clients that we serve to the client, but to our superiors, the people that hired us, the most important thing oftentimes is the deliverables, the billables, the measurables, the things that are going to show up in the graphs and the statistics. So that was really a wake-up call for me, as far as just, okay, these are the things that I know that I have to do to be able to give the highest level of care to the client. I'm going to have to show that on paper as well. Uh, so another challenge that I've kind of encountered in this first year is that I've seen as a peer is that it's easy to get siloed into just being a direct service person, and in a lot of our agencies, that is considered to be like the lowest level of the organization, and and as a peer, we can be labeled by that, it and that's our way into a lot of organizations, but that's as far as it can go. There's kind of a ceiling that's kind of built into a lot of the industry, and I think that's something that I encountered and banged my head against a little bit, and that's why I felt like it was so important for me to try to learn new skills and develop my abilities, and not just develop skills or develop new abilities, but display those skills and display those abilities and show that I can do more than just what I'm being asked, or I can figure out how to add tools to my toolbox to be able to do more than just this, or show my coworkers or others in my organization that I have skills just outside of direct service as well, that I can be a greater asset to the organization. And I think that was really important for me, just even in the way I feel about the work that I do, is that I know that I can be used in more ways than just one, and I think that's important for anybody in their job, is to feel like they are developing, and you feel like your skill set is growing, and you feel like you can add more value to yourself and to your agency, and I think that's a big component to be able to do this work too, because I think there's a lot of talk in amongst my peers and the people that are doing this work, that people run into being overworked and burnout and things like that. But I think the part of the solution for that is skills development, or being valued. If you're valued, and you're finding new ways to add value to yourself and add value to your agency, that's it develops the motivation that's needed to continue to do this work. You want to feel like you're developing and you're growing, and you have the opportunity to grow in your agency. You don't want to feel like you came in at the ground level and that's the only place you'll stay. And I think that's part of the solution to that, and running into a lot of those burnout issues and things like that. Um, and then I think a part of that is just networking, inside the workplace and outside the workplace. Even if we're being siloed as peers, if you build a strong professional network within your agency and outside, then there's nothing that can silo you, because you've met people in other places and you learn more about the industry and the agency as a whole. So you can find where you can fit in better. It's easier to see yourself in other places as well. I think another issue that I've encountered, as far as just even in the industry, is just being labeled by recovery. I think to be a peer, I spoke at the beginning of, like, my qualifications as a peer is not what people consider to be professional qualifications. I'm putting my worst foot forward, not my best foot forward. I'm talking about the worst parts of myself, or the worst parts of my life, or my character defects is what I present with. Yet and still, we're in a professional setting where most people are working at our agencies are presenting only the best parts of themselves. So there's kind of there's a dichotomy here, where both sides are facing the center, and everybody knows the worst parts about me, and I only know the best parts about them. And then it's easy to get labeled as, okay, this is the guy with the criminal record, or this is the guy with the mental health issue, or this is the person that's dealing with addiction, or this is the person that's dealt with this or that and the other, and that exists, that helped get me into a role as a peer. But then how can that label affect me from professional development, and that's just something that I've seen with um, coworkers of mine and others in our agency as well, or in our organization as well, is how do we shake off just that label of just being a recovery person, or just being a peer, or whatever it is. And it's just something to think about. I think I don't know if I have an exact answer for how to move around that, because this is a part of who we are. These are a part of, but I think part of that helps is, I think, in that building personal relationships with people that you work around, or you'll discover that more and more people have these experiences in common than most people would think, and most people in their job don't um, lead with the worst parts about themselves, but in when you develop actual genuine relationships with people, you actually get to know more than just what somebody's resume says, and that that I think is where you bridge the gap with being labeled. I believe is when people actually get to know you and you actually get to know them. Um, I know from coming from the background I was coming from, as far as just dealing with the legal system and dealing with living in a shelter. I think one thing that was I guess complex for me to deal with in a professional setting is dealing with dishonesty and distrust. I was coming from environments where dishonesty and distrust are not highly respected, but obviously in a professional setting, there is a certain amount of I guess not knowing the whole truth or about things, and just having to navigate around some of that stuff, um, just personally, and not taking these things personally. Whereas the environment that I'm coming from, that's a personal issue. You feel like if somebody doesn't tell you the whole story or whatever, it is a form of disrespect. But in a professional setting, these are things that are common practice. So I just had to be able to move around that and manage my feelings and emotions about some of that stuff. And I'm sure everybody working knows what that feeling is like when, somebody is going to tell you directly to your face something that's not 100% the truth, but also this is just part of working in this field. Um, Another thing that I had to really manage my feelings and emotions around were policies or practices that I felt were harmful to clients because I've been a client. So some of that was okay. I had to be able to manage using my passion to serve clients, you know what I'm saying? But yet and still um, work under the umbrella of some policies that I might not agree with, and or I might not feel might be the best practice to serve our client, and still have to execute these at a high level, or just execute them at all, and that's something that I've had to navigate around, but then also try to find a way to use my expertise and my intimate knowledge of some of these situations that our clients deal with to best advocate for them to my superiors and explain why some of these practices or policies might be harmful to clients, and that's how I had to wrap my head around some of these things. Was like, okay, maybe they just don't know that um, this could be harmful, or this could be difficult for a client to encounter or deal with or whatever. And that was part of like the framework shift that I had to adapt over time to be able to, you know, because when you're asked to do something, that's when you're asked to enact a policy, that's never the time where that policy can actually change or that practice could actually change. It's going to take some time, space, and opportunity for some of these things to change. So being able to um, best articulate my viewpoints on some of these things in a way that could be digested by my superiors, was part of what I had to develop as far as my skill set. Um, Now, one of the another big challenge that I've seen with myself, but definitely with some of my coworkers, is just being triggered on the job. Working as a peer, somebody with lived experience, some people that are in recovery. They're working with clients that are dealing with what the situations we're coming from. I think there's a lot of times where um, and I can use a specific example where a coworker of mine called me because she was immediately triggered. She's somebody in recovery, and she was working with a client, and somebody left her drug of choice that she's been in recovery for over 10 years right in front of her, and it took a lot of it took all the tools in her toolbox to be able to move around this. And one of those things was just to call, and just for us to be able to speak. But that's something that I think supervisors specifically need to be very cognizant and supportive around, is that doing this type of work, there's are events or critical situations that are going to arise um, where a peer can easily be triggered by something that happened to them in the past, and especially, and I can say for me, being somebody that deals with PTSD, you, it there's no way to predict your reaction in the moment, but just having support makes the whole situation easier to navigate, and knowing that you have the support of your team and the people around you and your supervisors and the directors and everybody around, and that everybody's on the same page about what we deal with and how we're going to move around it, makes the situation much easier to navigate, I would say. Um, and I think another challenge, I think, is just, I think always will probably always be just a lack of understanding and support from supervisors or superiors in the workplace, because we don't all come from the same backgrounds and we don't all deal with the same issues, and I found like it's been communication strategy for me, is sometimes like I had to find ways to best educate my superiors on who I am and what I deal with best and what I struggle to deal with or what I'm still struggling to deal with, and the best practices that we can come up with together on how to share information about each other, or best practices for each other, or just even understanding. I think for me, I had to really take time and be intentional about understanding my superiors' limitations, and then being able to educate them on my limitations, just so we have common expectations. Because if it's when I think if there's miscommunication about expectations, that's when we can kind of fall onto each other's bad sides, But if we're clear about, if we're on the same page as far as what we expect from each other, then we can get to where we're trying to get to. But I think the biggest thing is just having that open line of communication and trusting the communication line that's open. That doesn't necessarily mean we have to trust each other's word 100%, but just trust that we have the ability to speak about things, or try to resolve conflicts, And another thing was just knowing who supports you. I think that's really important to know, just in your agency or within your team, or just in life in general, just knowing who are your biggest supporters, so you know who you can rely on in these situations where you really need support. But then also knowing, and the flip side to that too, is it's important to identify who aren't your biggest supporters, just so that you don't put all your trust in the wrong people, because we're all trying to, in this, I'm trying to develop myself professionally. So I need to focus on the people that are really genuinely dedicated to me developing professionally, and take those opportunities to those people that can best support me. And I think in that vein is educating my superiors on how best to support me, and what are the parts of my personality that we can mesh easily, and also what are my pet peeves? What are the things that really bother me? When you educate people on your pet, nobody's going to try to intentionally upset you. But if they don't know that these are the things that upset you, then these things will happen unintentionally. So just being clear and communicative about some of the things that are hard for you to deal with or agitate you. And then for me, like, it's something that I do with my clients, but I have a self-care plan, and that's something I do with all my clients, but I have my own, so that I can walk my clients on through my self-care plan and how that works for me, you know. and what that looks like, and the different areas of myself that I have to work on, and how I develop those certain areas of mine, and that's been hugely beneficial for me. And then I also have a recovery plan. Some people call it a relapse prevention plan, but I do that with my clients as well. But I have one for myself, and I have to check in on it periodically just to see where I'm at and what goals that I've hit and what am I maintaining or updating and these different things, so I can make sure that I'm staying on the right path with this. And I think one of the last things I'm really going to touch on is like what a great supervisor looks like. You know, I think in going through this process, that's something that's been um, interesting for me to see what works for me and what doesn't work for me as far as my supervisors or the people above me in my job. And I think the number one thing I believe is just a clear communication of expectations. What tasks am I being asked to do? How much time some of these things can take or should take, um, and what is my exact scope, if even if it's just for the day, for the week, for the month, like setting clear goals and how we can accomplish those goals together, and I think that's hugely beneficial for anybody working as a peer is that the expectations don't change, and if they do, they're clearly communicated. I think that's um, I think that's what great supervisors do. Is clearly define what what the role is, what you're expected to do, what it's almost like what you're being graded on, or what you're being judged by. And I know for me, being newer to the workforce, it was like that, knowing that I know exactly what I'm being asked to do, and knowing that I have all the tools that I need to do that task, make my job a lot easier. And then even knowing where I can get the help for the things I might not be the best at, or the things that I might struggle with. And I think the other thing would be just consistency and support, and just continually um, delivering that message that peers are supported, you know, and and then finding out the best ways to support a peer. When your supervisor sits you down and says, hey, I know you need help with this. This is how you can get this help, or what are the areas that I can do more for you? That's the biggest, I think, way to build trust within for a peer, and definitely as a supervisor, just building that trust by continually informing a peer that they're supported, and then I guess to piggyback off that, it would be advocating for a peer, like as peers, a lot of the work we do is advocacy work, but I think it's great to know that we're being advocated for as well, you know, to whoever it is, whether it's other superiors in the organization or other places around. Just knowing that we're being advocated for helps us to be able to know that we're supported, and that people appreciate the work that we're doing, because a lot of time, a lot of the work that we're doing is hard, it's grueling, we're put in a lot of difficult situations. So you always want to know that you're being advocated for. As we advocate for the clients that we serve, we want to know we're being advocated for within our organizations too. And these are the things that really like build trust within a peer, or trusting the relationship, or trusting the agency that we work for, and trusting that we're doing the best job that we can possibly do, being able to trust your supervisor that you can take all your problems to them, whatever issue that you're encountering, to them, to where you have support to know, hey, even if they don't have the answer, to help me find the answer, or even if they don't know how we're going to do this, we'll find a way together, and that it's not just all on the peer to solve all the world's problems, because with the clients we're serving, we're dealing with all the world's problems, all the world's toughest problems, and knowing that we're being supported and being able to resolve whatever issues that arise, I think that's hugely beneficial, and it makes the work possible, and um, it makes the workplace a great place to be, And I think just when supervisors focus on your professional development, I think that's huge, I know I had a supervisor that sat me down when I first began, like, what are your professional goals? Let's figure these things out. We'll meet once a month about whatever your goals are to develop. What skills do you want to work on? How do you want to get there? What do you see? How do you see this going? And then um, putting it in a language that can both understand. So my supervisor at that time, he was into baseball. So we would talk about in baseball terms, there's a term five tool player, a player that has all the skills to be great. The player can hit, catch, run. Throw. I'm not a baseball guy, so I don't remember all of them. But that was the way he understood it, and that's the way we could talk about it. And it made sense. And that way we were able to consistently focus on building my skills in all these different areas and making me a five tool player. And that was hugely beneficial to me to get to where I can develop myself professionally and just knowing I had that support. And then the last thing I would say about that is just safe supervision. Supervision being a safe space for a peer to talk openly about what's really going on in their job and in their life. I think that having a safe space to deal with your supervisor is a game changer. You don't it's always going to be a tricky environment if you feel like you are walking on eggshells with your supervisor or with the people above you in your organization, and you can't be open and honest about even what your clients are going through, what you're going through, what this work entails, because there are a lot of tricky and critical situations that are going to arise just in doing the work that I do and the work that a lot of you guys do. So just having that safe environment to be able to speak freely, and creating that safe space and letting people know, letting a peer know that they are safe to speak their real mind or their real opinions about some of these issues. Just creates an environment where we can develop together. And I think the last piece I'm going to share today is just about leveraging lived expertise. I think for me, a large part of this journey is to trying to add value to my skill set, and um, with the goal of, and how it was explained to me by a mentor, was just making yourself invaluable. So part of that was just assisting coworkers in whatever I could help with, whatever I can in my agency, whatever I can add value to, or any issue that any coworker has, uh, making myself readily available to answer questions or assist in whatever it is, whether it's just even um, bringing boxes in outside for the office party, or if they need information on the type of shelters that I know personally, or whatever it is, just assisting coworkers in any way possible, because we're all people, and that helps just build genuine relationships. And then the flip side to that is allowing other people to assist you. I know that's something that me sometimes in life I've struggled with, but really I think one of the best ways to build genuine connections with people is allowing people to help you. Pe- every Most people want to help, just naturally, and then when you allow people to help you, then they have a genuine interest and um a genuine connection to your growth. So allowing others to assist you has been something that really helped me a lot as far as in my professional development. Showing initiative, that's another one, is just taking opportunities to do things outside of your comfort zone or outside of what maybe you're best at, you know, and and then taking the opportunities around you and being able to bring what you gain back to your team, and building on the knowledge base around you, and taking time to focus on the others around you as well, and their development, and adding to what they can do and to their skill sets as well, or just offering opportunities and then displaying your expertise. It's not just building the skills, but being able to show off some of the things that you are good at, and letting other people know around you what skills that you have and you bring to the table that they might not have thought that you possessed or might not have assumed that you have, just being able to display these things in a way that people will notice that they can come to you for certain things, and I think that really has helped my professional development journey. And that's what that's all I got for you guys. Does anybody have any questions?
I actually have a question
Hmm.
myself.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I find this topic to be like more important than I thought it was after listening to you.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, you really touch on a lot of good points, um, like about what's helpful, and I wholeheartedly know and believe all of like what you have done to build your professional development. Um, it works, right? So my question is at the same time, right? We work in this field where everybody has lived experience and not everybody is really pursuing professional development, right?
Hmm.
Um, and more so in this workforce than others. And so like how do you deal with that if like, obviously I find it important to surround myself with people who kind of, like having a mentor and surrounding myself with people who are like-minded and who are really going to help me build myself up as well, and so anyway, like how do you deal with that, like while still like trying to work on good healthy relationships with coworkers,
Yeah.
does that
Yeah.
make
No.
sense?
No, that makes great sense. So let me say this: like I was told in, I believe it was October or November in my agency that we had no funding for professional development. But in at that moment, instead of letting that deter me, I was like, you know what? It almost motivated me to a certain extent. I was like, okay, now I can just find all the free opportunities I can find for professional development. So I applied and I got a scholarship to go to this conference, the National Alliance for Ending Homelessness conference in San Francisco. I went in March, but they covered all my expenses because I was a part of a lived experience cohort. I think it comes down to just really being intentional about this is your life, this is your profession, and and saying and really focusing on okay, to be able to best serve the clients I serve, I need to get better at what I do. That was kind of my framework for how I looked at this or developed it, my paradigm, you know,
Mhm.
like okay, if I want to be able to do this work at a high level, I need to get add skills to my skill set. Excuse me.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, that's actually really helpful because yeah, I mean thinking about it, taking it, I didn't think about it in terms of like taking it outside of like my work environment,
Hmm. Hmm.
but that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd like to read a couple of comments in the chat.
Hmm.
Jenny just said, "Thank you for sharing. You have amazing insight, and this increased my insight." Vanessa said, I just wanted to say thank you so much. This has been my favorite presentation of the day so far. I've
Mm.
taken so many notes, and you've really given me a fresh perspective on what I can do to help offer more opportunity for all the peers that I oversee. Congratulations on all of your successes. Yeah, I see so many bright things for your future.
Thank you.
Um, and then Cameron said, listening to how far you've come in the last 11 months, I can see you moving up and doing great work in program development and helping encourage positive policy change at some point.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I appreciate your guys' comments. It means a lot.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Steven, in San Francisco. Just a question. How did you, because you said you worked for the gospel mission, right? In Seattle.
Yeah.
How do
Seattle
you
Youth Gospel
distinguish,
Mission.
yeah, how do you distinguish or get through to, because most missions, are faith-based.
Hmm.
How do you end up how do you get through just understanding and teaching people to be peers and not look at it only from a faith perspective, but just from a holistic perspective?
100%. So, um, my time at Union Gospel Mission was, I guess, in a couple different parts. Like that was where I lived. I was in living in the men's shelter there, and then I served it as an intern there. And then as an intern there is when I completed my peer counseling certification. And and I say that to say the fact that so I still go back there every once in a while and talk to some of their classes. And in that, I think it's maybe 15 guys now have completed their uh, peer certifications now because they asked me how to do it, and I walk them through that whole process of becoming a peer because this is a profession that you can enter into from that type of situation. So I don't know. I'm my goal was my goal in that is not to, I guess, change the organization of UGM because that was never really my focus or goal. My thought around it was to give guys opportunities coming out of there. So a lot of my friends and people that I used to live with, they're able to work professionally now. Whether Whereas before the job opportunities for coming out of a men's shelter were very limited to, second chance employment opportunities or day labor opportunities and things like that, which are great opportunities. But now there's this whole pathway and pipeline to where um, you can come out of that situation and be a professional to do this work because nobody knows this work more intimately than people that are going through those type of situations. Nobody can Nobody has a better understanding of somebody experiencing homelessness than somebody that's experienced homelessness. So that's kind of like my view of it as far as the paradigm shift was just not focusing on the organization, but focusing on the people, because a lot of these organizations they're funded by private donors. They don't need government funding, so they can operate however they want to operate. And I'm not I would never sit here and say that this is a perfect organization and all my experiences were great because it's not a perfect organization and all of my experiences weren't great. But those things prepared me for what I would deal with here as well. But then also it opened my eyes to a whole new pipeline that exists for people coming out of experiencing homelessness to be able to serve people experiencing homelessness. And that was kind of my focus was like, okay, I want more people to be able to use this pathway of being a peer, working as a peer counselor, supporter, advocate, all these different specialists, all these different titles to be able to have a professional future coming out of this and to be able to best serve the people that are experiencing that. And I hope I answered your question. I know I kind of talked a few different ways, but please, if you need further clarity, please let me know.
No, that was good. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay, awesome.
Um, I just want to mention you are getting so much love in the chat. Um, Rosalind said you should feel proud. This has been a wonderful presentation. S.
Mhm.
Gutierrez said, thank you for being a human being first and bringing 1,000% or being 1,000% authentic. Kudos to you. Wayne said, I really enjoyed your talk. Lived experience is a great asset in this field. I see the similarities, not the differences. And a blue book.
Mhm.
Dr. Kathy Cash said, what you've shared is an inspiration to other peers. Thank you for your authenticity and transparency. And Paula said, you have a lived journey and you have a lived journey, and thank you for sharing. Continue to move forward gracefully in your recovery. Embrace it, grow through it, and I see you persevering through it all. One should not judge another, but should look into your eyes, which leads to the window of your soul, and see you. God's created you to be a wonderful, strong peer. Rise up, Emmanuel. You found your response or your
Oh,
purpose. Sorry.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so much love. Amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate all of you guys, 100%.
Um, does anyone have any other questions?
Hi, it's Modupe. It's not really a question as much as it is a comment about what I identified as Emmanuel spoke. He talked about the strength of community quite frequently, whether those communities were communities of practice, communities of brothers, communities of friends. He talked about the value of community. And I found that to be instructive in how he has framed his journey and also leveraged the second aspect of community, which is the networks.
Hmm.
He again seems to have mastered the art of, creating or mining his community relationships for the networks that are profitable and beneficial in his journey. So I was taking notes about, to my mind, how effective have I been at mining my pool of relationships, mining the different communities. It seems very deliberate, particularly as he has mapped it out. And I think he just nailed it for me when he said, every time he was engaging with his supervisors, he was casting the vision of his direction, his future, and asking for their help to get to that destination. And I find that that's something that many people don't do. We don't frame our future. We kind of let it happen in real time, as opposed to framing that future. So I'm really excited about that. Another point that I found was the two things: collaboration in recovery, cooperation in recovery. Um, Many times you find there could be competition and it doesn't necessarily lend itself to the recovery process. So the ability to collaborate and to cooperate on this journey of recovery is significant in our industry. And as we veer out, it's important for us to take that message out with us as well, that there's enough room. Self-advocacy, he also talked extensively about, which is very important. If I can't speak for myself, I have to find my voice before I help others find theirs. And one of the powerful tools that I'm glad he mentioned, in not exactly the same terminology, but a wellness plan, a wellness recovery action plan, or RAP as we call it, and how he's able to use his own personal experience in having that personal plan to support the members that he works with. So thank you so very much for articulating your thoughts beautifully and giving us your template. I will definitely be borrowing from it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well said, also. I agree 100%.